right. I paid attention this time. I know what I'm doing.
No
Very
mess?
professional operation.
No mess?
Yeah.
Holy
Well, it's
crap.
got a little fuzz on it. Not fuzz,
okay.
but,
Okay.
bubbles. Bubbly. It helps if you don't breathe them in.
Okay. So, welcome to the show, everyone. Jake is dying.
Thank you. Welcome to Movie Boners. Welcome to Movie Boners. Movie Boners. Well, I don't. That completely threw me off.
We've been doing this for 4 years.
Shut the fuck up. What beer are you drinking today?
Well, I could not find, for the life of me, maybe I tapped out all the specialty stuff. I don't know. I couldn't find anything that was striking me as relevant to the episode today, which kind of bummed me out. But then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to drink one I think I've had on the show before, but it was just a nice little, I was in the mood for it. So I'm drinking one because I just felt like it. So
Good reason.
I am drinking from the home state, Odell Brewing. I'm drinking Mountain Standard IPA.
It's a standard.
It's a classic. It's just a wonderful beer. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Awesome. I did find a very appropriate beer. I don't even know where these guys are at. From Downingtown, Pennsylvania, the Victory Beer Company. I have a beer called Golden Monkey.
Okay.
And part of the reason that breathing in the bubbles threw me off is because, it's a 9.5% Belgian style triple ale with added spice, and you can taste the spiciness. It's a little spicy.
All right.
In like a really good way. It's
so by the time we get to the war, like, you're going to be feeling great.
Yeah. War, is it good for? Who needs it? Okay. New stuff that's come out recently. Yeah. What have you seen lately? I know you've seen quite a bit.
I've seen a handful. Well, let's start from a couple weeks ago. Right when it kind of came out and the hype was building up around it, there were 2 movies that came out that the hype was pretty big. So me being me was very much like, well, I'm finding the showtime for this. I'm going to enjoy it. Challenge accepted. So the first one I did was Late Night with the Devil.
Yeah.
Which was supposed to be like super uber terrifying and like new and hip and all that, right? So I went into it like, okay, it's just another possession movie. And then shortly into it, I was thinking, oh, this is actually really interesting. Oh my God, this is a fantastic movie. And I fucking love that movie. Like, the more I thought about it when it ended and afterwards, the more I realized, like, every decision they made, 99% of the decisions they made, I thought were great. There's one instance that I felt was a little like, that might be a little overboard, but it wasn't enough to take me out of the film or detract me from everything else. I found it very refreshing that they did something kind of different with the style horror. And that was a relief. So,
yeah, it was a great way to do found footage, making it a
literal late night
broadcast
show.
Yeah. Then you could have really good like camera angles and camera quality, and it all made sense to have been recorded. And it was very interesting. I spoiler alert, I saw it too, because luckily it came to streaming pretty quickly, and so watched it, and it actually scared my wife. She's like, oh, I'm not scared of this at all. And then later that night, she woke me up. She's like, I'm scared. So, I would say it's very good, very effective, and I liked it a lot. And that main actor, I can't wait for him to be in more stuff. He's great.
David something or other. It starts with a D.
David Dastmalchian.
Yeah. He's that guy that we've all seen in so many movies. And he's always a background guy. And he's like been slowly kind of working his way closer to the front. After this movie, I was like, this dude, he's got to be the next Cillian Murphy. Like, he is going to
got to break out.
Blow people away. He's so good.
Yeah.
And then the other one that I went and saw, which I was going to see it anyways, but when they started, part of the marketing started being theater footage of audiences like freaking out
You love when I do
and
that.
squirming. And then the studio released a story of like people on set during certain scenes being filmed had to leave the set because it was just so disturbing. They couldn't handle it. So immediately I was like, oh, I am your target audience. Bring it on. It helps that it's also the prequel to a classic horror. So I went and saw the First Omen.
Okay.
And I had kind of like a weird, like satanic weekend that weekend because I saw those two movies the same weekend. And at the same time, I was prepping for our guest spot on I Love Horror.
Yeah.
And I happened to watch a couple possession movies at home too to prep for that I ended up not needing to watch at all. But I found myself kind of like, watched a lot of Satan this weekend. Maybe
maybe you need a rom-com or something.
Right. But First Omen was pretty cool. For a prequel to a classic, I thought they did it really well. I think it's shockingly well made. They filmed it to match even the style and look of the original.
So you can like
Omen.
watch them together.
You can very much do back to back. Very cool movie. There's a couple like, well, this is, if you were someone not as desensitized as me, you would probably be squirming.
If you're a normal person.
Right. You'd probably squirm a little bit on this, but cool movie. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot like Late Night with the Devil for me, where it was the more I thought about it afterwards, the more I realized I enjoyed it. So bravo to them.
Okay, very cool.
And then we watched a Czech Republic film called Restore Point. That was very cool. That was an interesting little sci-fi film, which you'll hear about later. But now the best ones. So at the time of recording, 3 movies. Well, one had already been out for a week, and then 2 others came out. So I had like a wide open weekend. I told myself we're going to the theater. So I did a double feature on Saturday, and then I went and saw the third one this morning on the following Sunday. So I went and saw the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare.
Yeah. Which I'm so sad that neither of us drafted, because
neither of us drafted.
Had so little, I guess, faith in it, but it sounds amazing.
It fucking is. It's so cool. I like, bravo to everyone a part of this movie. It was so much fun. I mean, this was one of those movies, and I think there's always one for me every year where I'm like, this is why we go to the theater.
Yeah.
This is that movie so far. Obviously, it's early in the year. Still, there's plenty to come. But right now, this was like, this is why I come to the theater.
Over Doom Part 2?
Different version.
Yeah.
Like, different kind of...
Doom Part 2 is not, like, fun.
Right. Where this is. This is Guy Ritchie having fun all over again. It was like watching a mix of Man from U.N.C.L.E. and Inglourious Bastards all mixed together, but it's Guy Ritchie style. And you know what is...
That sounds perfect.
It kind of is. They do a couple things in this movie that I was like, thank God. The tone of the film stays. There's never like a drastic shift in stuff. They maintain just that super fun Guy Ritchie kind of like tempo, and it's great. But the best thing they did, and Jake, you know I'm a sucker for this, is when you can actively tell how much fun every single cast member is having on screen. You can tell that with everyone in this movie. You can tell everyone was just like, this is the best thing all of us are going to do for a while. Absolute joy. Highly recommend. It was so good. So fucking good.
Having seen, since you've seen that, how do you feel about Alan Ritchson, the like huge American guy, being Batman?
I'm all for it. I think he'd be cool.
I haven't watched Reacher, but all the stills I've seen from the Reacher show, he looks huge, and I think he would be amazing.
He's like foreboding. He's huge. Now his character is not. I mean, he kills a lot of guys with knives, so it's very up close, like bloody kills. But his character is kind of very funny. Like he doesn't take a lot serious, so it's kind of funny to be asked the Batman question based on a character where he like talks in a Danish accent and slashes dudes' throats open. So
makes jokes, not very Batman-y.
Yeah, but absolutely loved it. That was so much fun. And then because I told you that I would, and because whenever there's this massive hit, I'm a big sucker for it.
Yeah.
So I saw Civil War, and I know leading into it, I had already spoken how I didn't think it looked that appealing to me. I felt it was probably in poor taste, just concerning current culture in the country and all that.
Yeah, do we need any more division or whatever?
Yeah. But the amount of like perfect scores that I was seeing this movie get, and people just being like, this movie blew my mind. It's so effective. It's so like groundbreaking and life-changing. I was like, okay.
It's the biggest opening A24's ever had.
It probably will be the biggest one they'll ever have after.
It's big.
It's huge. So I don't think it's that great.
Oh yeah. Hey, leading into this, you're like, okay, now we're gonna talk about the good ones, and I was like, oh, that means he likes Civil War.
Civil War is weird to me, dude, because it does a lot of stuff that I'm like, I like that decision. I like what they did here. That was a cool choice. The movie as a whole, not that entertaining, and I know I'm in the minority heavily here. Not intense at all. The reason being, I did not care about any of the characters. From the get-go, I was like, I don't give a shit about these people. I didn't think it was that great. I thought it was kind of boring. I think there's better battle scenes done in other movies. It does a lot of really smart things. So it's very unbiased, which I was like, that was my biggest worry, is that it was going to be heavily preachy. It's not. But there's just... I don't care about these journalists. I don't like... Their whole shtick throughout the whole movie is only the story and only the perfect photo matter. That's all they're going for. So... all emotions are just like, get a picture, or we're not going to deal with it. And it really kind of just like disconnected me. So I did not think Civil War was that great. I thought it was kind of boring. And I know I'm not the only one, because judging by the couple people sitting around me who were also yawning, and like people were getting up and leaving and coming back. There's a couple next to me that were like, whisper shit talking it throughout the whole movie. I was like, okay, so where's the love? Now, I'm not holding people who like it, I'm not holding it against you. I'm just curious, where do you see the hype? Because it's just not there for me. Just not for me.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I'm definitely still interested in seeing it. So
I'm curious to see when I get around to hear your take on it, because I didn't hate it. I'll say that I didn't hate it, but I also just didn't think it was that great. So,
it's hard. It's pretty much impossible to like a movie that you're not really engaged with or invested in.
And then because I'm a sucker for just silly fun, and if you're gonna throw a bunch of gore into it, I'm really gonna enjoy it. So I went and saw Abigail because I wanted something silly and fun. It's that vampire ballerina movie that's out.
I know very little about it other than that, pretty much.
Well, it is a comedy straight through. It's just lots of blood. So much blood in this movie. I loved it. It sets out to do the one primary thing movies are supposed to do, be entertaining, and it pulls it off. Like, it does it well. It's funny. If I remember right, it's by the same team that either produced or wrote Ready or Not.
Oh, okay.
So it's that same style of humor, like where the horror aspect is there, but you're like, I could see it being pure horror, but is it actually pure horror?
Yeah.
I know you'll agree with that statement.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I loved it. The little girl that plays Abigail was fantastic. And for fans of the Scream requels who were upset that the lead actress was like fired or whatever it was.
Yeah.
She is the main character in this one. You will love her in this role. She's great.
Okay.
So I was happy to see her find a new role and hopefully better things on the horizon for her. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was kind of bogus what happened to her.
Yeah. And that was all I watched.
Okay. That's a good amount. Good amount for sure. Mine, I guess I just have two things besides Late Night with the Devil, which we already talked about. The first one, speaking of comedies, I guess, I saw Madam Web because
you actually watched Madam Web?
Yeah, bro. First of all, this movie is incredible. It is the funniest fucking thing I've ever seen because, first of all, it's weird to see a movie set in the early 2000s, and they really try hard to make sure you know it's set in the early 2000s.
Okay.
Because everything about it is like very early 2000s, and they're like, here's a billboard of Beyonce's album that came out at around that time, and here's this guy on a sidekick, and here's the guy. Like, they do so many early 2000 things. It's hilarious. But also, the other weird thing, you remember all of the like promo footage of like all the different girls in their Spider-Woman suits and stuff?
Yeah.
They're in those suits for about 30 combined seconds of the whole movie.
I had heard that. I heard that the suits are like, you might be giving it credit. I heard it was like one quick shot of them in the suits, and that's it.
Yeah, they replayed the same shot a couple of times. Okay. So I'm trying to add it up, and it's probably less than 30 seconds total. It's hilariously terrible, and really, I mean, it's not unbearable. It's definitely a movie that we watched because we were like, I don't give a shit what we watch right now, and I don't want to really be invested in anything. And we're like, Madam Web sounds perfect for that, and it was a very silly, stupid time that was kind of just easily streamable, and I imagine a bunch of people will do that. And then we started the Fallout series.
Oh man, I want to watch this so bad.
Yeah, I didn't realize until like we were in the middle of it that, so I'd only seen the first 2 episodes, but I didn't realize that Jonathan Nolan like produced it and directed the first 3 episodes and all that stuff. And I didn't realize that he did Westworld, which was like an awesome show. And I was like, Jonathan Nolan's just been like killing it on TV, and I didn't even know. And so that is pretty cool. And so I think that if you're at all familiar with the games, especially like the most recent game, Fallout 4, I think that it's very definitely does all of the, here's all the things you like, here's all the things you want to see, here's all of the, like, not really member berries, but just like it's accurate as if you were in like the real thing. And so I think people will get that. If you have no familiarity with that, I still think it's really fun. It's very violent. There's a lot of kind of like, there's a lot of over the top violence. And so if you're into that, it's fun. If you're not into that, maybe not so much. But it's also really kind of just, I liked all of the characters, and I liked the kind of just the mood of it. It's also kind of just lighter and fun, not super serious stakes or anything. And it's definitely cool. I definitely recommend it. I'm interested to see where it goes in the next 6 episodes, but I've heard really great things, and it only gets better, so I think it'll be good.
Yeah, I never played the game, but everyone that I know that has watched the series and has played the game. Everyone has been like raving about it. And I have a lot of people that have been like constantly hounding me. Have you watched it yet? You need to watch it. It's like, you're going to love this. And I'm like, okay, I will watch it. I just haven't yet.
Yep. So I think that's all the new stuff.
Cool.
Last housekeeping thing, our merch store is fully refreshed currently. You may have noticed this little ditty that I'm wearing, a little baseball tee we kind of have this new, what do you call it? Like I guess logo, but it's not really like a logo. It's more of like a theme, I guess.
We're going with a couple themes here that are on brand for us and for how we feel you guys are as well.
So we thought it was very appropriate to embrace the Average Joe's logo from Dodgeball and kind of do our own Movie Boner spin on it. You may see the colors change and a little Movie Boners logo and all that stuff. And just the kind of the theme of the Average Joe's or the Average Joe's gym in Dodgeball is very much how we kind of feel about this show and about you and our podcast is kind of for outcasts of people that if you love movies that the mainstream hates, you're safe here.
It's true. Yeah, we're pretty inviting to a lot of stuff. So we just felt that was it fit us, and it helps that we both love Dodgeball and go Average Joe's. Fuck those Cobras.
Cobras can suck it. So check out the merch store, pick up some cool stuff. There's a lot of new things and cool things there, a variety of things. And then I've been waiting for that Movie Boners Double Deuce Roadhouse hat to come back in stock because it hasn't been, and it's very limited now. It's not been in stock for a while. So you are a very lucky man that you have one. So I think if anybody wants to get stuff, get it now because you never know when it'll go out of stock
when it leaves. Yeah. All right.
Okay, so. Are you ready to get into the actual episode? That was a lot of stuff.
That was a lot, but we're good.
So, pretty soon, I think pretty much right now, by the time this episode comes out, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is a big movie this year. And we thought, we've kind of done this in the past where it's helpful to have kind of a refresher. If you are not the kind of person that wants to sink 10 hours rewatching all the movies, it's good to do a quick recap of kind of where things are, what happened, what we liked about it, and kind of what we're looking forward to in the new one kind of thing. And I don't know about you, if you've seen all of the old ones. There's a big, long history with Planet of the Apes.
There's a crazy history with Planet of the Apes.
I saw it when I was a kid. I remember my dad going and renting I think it was all 6 VHS tapes, and we kind of just watched them in order all the way through.
Yeah. No. My dad and I watched the first one a couple times, I think, when I was a kid, but I was never a fan, really. Okay. I never thought it was that big of a deal. It just didn't click with me. It also didn't help that I saw Spaceballs before I saw Planet of the Apes, so I knew the twist, but I had seen the Spaceballs spoof version of it first. So
it is one of those famous twists that everybody has kind of. It's popular culture that everybody's talked about.
And being a movie fan, Planet of the Apes is one of those that's you know it, you've seen it, and you know all the references to it, essentially.
Right.
Or so you think you know all the references. Reading about all the references in the most recent trilogy, I was like, oh, I didn't know anything, apparently. Okay. But I have to say, I'll be honest, I've never seen the whole thing. I've only ever seen the first one a couple times as a kid.
Okay.
And then I saw the Tim Burton attempted reboot,
Yeah.
and that was forgettable.
I'm not gonna lie, I put it back on because I hadn't seen it since it first came out, and maybe not since it first came out. I've only seen it once, and I had forgotten everything about it. And I was like, I remember it not being great, so I tried to give it another shot.
Okay.
As we were kind of preparing for this. It's still forgettable, still not great. And I think the worst thing that it does is tries to basically redo the exact same thing. It's like a true remake that they try to redo what the original did. That it starts in space as the space guys, and they go to the planet and learn that it's in the future and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, everybody knows that at this point. It's not that interesting to remake it, really.
I do remember. I remember like the weird costume choice they had for Mark Wahlberg. It was like a Lost in Space inspired, but all gray suit, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And then I remember they did try to like revamp the ending for the twist, right? Because everyone's expecting the Statue of Liberty, so they changed it. And I remember being young, not being a fan of the original, and still rolling my eyes and feeling very cringy about the revamped twist at the end. Yeah. I wanted to rewatch it in preparation for this, and then I just didn't. So I'll be honest.
I don't mind it. Nobody cares. But Planet of the Apes is interesting because it is kind of the first major science fiction franchise ever. Like the first movie came out in 1968, way before Star Wars, way before the first Star Trek movie and all of that stuff. So it's crazy that it kind of like, which has always been a huge success, every movie they put out, even though Fox kept cutting the budget of every movie that came out. So you said you haven't seen all the other ones except the first one. I would say generally that's fine because they all keep getting kind of lower budgets and lower effort, but they all keep making a bunch of money. Although I do think how you approach Rise of the Planet of the Apes, the first of the new trilogy, does kind of depend on if you've seen the fourth original movie, like Conquest
and Battle.
Yeah.
And Beneath. Those were like the three that really lent their inspiration for this last trilogy that came out.
Conquest and Battle in particular, because they are kind of about the same sort of themes, about kind of going back to present time. Well, not present time back then because it was the 70s, but the time that the like normal apes start learning increase intelligence and then eventually talk and then eventually take over. That's kind of the whole new trilogy stuff. And that didn't happen until basically the end of the original series. And so that's very interesting. And I like that the new series kind of did the opposite. They just kind of started at the beginning, which is present time, and then the apes kind of grow over time, and you kind of follow it from the beginning where it makes sense. And you also get to follow Caesar, which is very interesting. He's kind of obviously the focal point of the whole story, and you get to follow his journey. And so I do think that the new trilogy, almost about to be quadrilogy, is really good. It's definitely.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it and having a lot of hesitancy with it, that I was, especially coming off the Tim Burton one. I was like, oh, they're trying this again. I can't believe it. But then kind of being in the middle of it and thinking, wow, this is really good. Like the first movie, seeing the first movie, being like, wow, this is really good. And I'm really invested. And I had misgivings about like the CGI and not doing the practical monkey suits and stuff, and the motion capture. And even though we'd seen Lord of the Rings and we knew Andy Serkis was amazing and we knew all these things,
right?
Still having misgivings that it would look good or hold up or I'd be invested. But you get invested fast and you get emotionally like, there are so many scenes that even watching it now, like I've seen it a handful of times and then rewatching it this last couple of weeks, I'm like, am emotionally locked into Caesar and his facial expressions and his feelings, and you just lose complete track that it's a CGI representation of an ape.
Yeah, I I remember when they announced Rise, and then the previews came out, and I was very like not interested at all. Like, I have no desire to have anything to do with this movie. Cool, Andy Serkis is doing another motion capture character, but I was like, not a fan of the original, not a fan of the Tim Burton reboot. Why am I going to be a fan of this one? So I didn't watch it for a long time. Actually, I didn't see it until about a week or two before Dawn came out.
Okay.
And I remember seeing the first preview for Dawn where it started off with that close-up. It's the opening shot of Dawn of Caesar's eyes. And he's got the paint on. And then it like did some frantic cutting where you saw people interacting with it. They had grown. And there was just something, that little curiosity. Like, Rise had been in theater, been a hit, left theater, was available to own for the longest time. And the curiosity to Dawn just kept getting stronger. All the posters for it, everything about it was just like, man, this doesn't look like what I remember. And it doesn't look like they're trying to like horribly one up the Burton reboot. It's almost like they decided
we're going to do our
clean
own
slate. We're doing our own thing. There's going to be a lot of inspiration from past, movies, but we're doing our own thing. And so on a whim, I bought Rise because it was also on sale right before Dawn was about to release.
Sure.
And I think I got it for like $8 or something like that. So I was like, all right, I'll do it.
Take a risk.
Yeah. And when I was watching it, it was like, you're watching it, they're showing the apes in the facility, they're talking about the ALZ 112. And I still think my only complaint of the movie is James Franco playing this doctor. Nothing against Frank, but there's always just something about it.
I buy him with his dad and John Lithgow, and I buy him with Caesar even just like at home.
Yes.
But when he gets in the lab and he's like the expert pharmaceutical chemist who knows how to orchestrate and create all of these like viruses and drugs and stuff, I'm like, no, I don't buy it.
Like, I'm really good at suspending belief, but I don't know. Maybe I've seen Franco play too many characters where he's getting high. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I digress.
And he's so young.
Yeah,
there's so many things about it, but yeah.
But I digress. So, but watching Rise, I was really shocked to find myself, like you just said, where it was like, oh, whoa. Like, I'm in this. The whole thing with Caesar being brought home so he doesn't die, because the doctor was like, I literally can't euthanize a single other ape. I actually care about these creatures. I felt
and I like the small reference. As a fan of the original, I like the small reference of Caesar's mom being called Bright Eyes, which was Charleston Heston's nickname that the apes called him in the original movie.
Right.
And so for her to be injected with the ALZ 112 and start showing increased cognition and intelligence, and then have a baby but them not know it, was really. And then she gets like aggressive, and you're like, oh, she's going crazy because of this drug. And then you learn that she's just had a baby. You didn't even realize. And that Caesar received that like genetic, improved intelligence through genetics. Yeah, that's really cool.
That's smart writing, because you totally buy that it's this injection or, this virus that they're testing on her that drove her nuts and she lost her shit.
Yeah.
You totally buy that, but the reveal of Caesar, you're like, oh, now I feel terrible because they just like killed this animal for doing it's like it is there to protect the young.
Yeah.
And you just killed it for it and completely misinterpreted. And you're supposed to be fucking smart people, but you're not. And
yeah. Well, I think they, like us, the audience, are waiting for something to go wrong. Like it's kind of almost once this experiment starts actually working and you're like, you want to get excited for it, but then you're like, what? You're waiting for the other shoe to drop, or there has to be some side effect, or what's going to happen. And then it happens. You're like, oh, of course it didn't work. We need to put him down. And then you're like, oh no, it did work, and we're the assholes. And it's definitely misleading. And I guess that sets up the later reveal that there is, I guess, not really a side effect, but it just isn't good enough to be what it needs to be in the end.
Yeah, I love watching Caesar's youth, I guess you could call it, him growing up in Will's house, and just his room and the way he interacts with Will and Will's dad. And then the doctor lady who ends up becoming kind of like surrogate or stepmom, I guess you would call her.
Yeah.
I love all of that. And it's so crazy that is, in my opinion, kind of like the strongest part of Rise is Caesar's kind of love or his humanity that he's being raised around, and his connection, especially with Will's dad. I love those two.
Man, freaking the character of Charles and to be Will's dad, who's doing this, trying to create this drug to battle Alzheimer's. And the way that John Lithgow plays him, like I'm a big John Lithgow fan, but I've never seen him really do something like this. And he completely invests me and tears my heart out at the same time, because I feel every single bit of his confusion and his fear and his frustration and everything that he's going through and everything that Will's going through because of it. And yeah, I love that whole
it's such an incredible dynamic of that film, and it's so important to Caesar's story of just his exposure to people is on such a, like, I guess, loving and desperate need to protect, which is a basic, I mean, that's what we're here for, especially if you have loved ones. And Caesar's exposure to that is so powerful. And I love seeing him still carry that throughout the course of the trilogy, and even kind of like moments where he starts to lose it or whatever. It always comes back for him. Man, I got to tell you though, the scenes where Caesar is wearing a leash, are rough for me to watch.
It is rough. It's rough for sure. Like it's challenging, I think, because you're like, you want to believe, you want to be invested, you want to be like, yeah, he's obviously very intelligent, very well. He's a part of the family when he's at home. But then when they start taking him out in the world, I guess you will feel the way that they must feel, which is like, but he is like, he's still a crazy strong animal who could definitely like just be upset, or something could go wrong, and like people would be at risk. It's not like, I mean, it's even crazier than taking like a dog out and just letting him run free. Like the chimpanzees and apes in general are massive and huge and strong as fuck, and so you're like, you want to trust him so much, but then also, you do feel so sad seeing him like that. You see like how, I guess it's mostly because you see how he feels, and particularly when he sees that other dog and he kind of realizes what I think he's accepting of it. At first he's like, this is just what we have to do, but then he sees the dog and how the dog's like aggressive and how the owners of the dog are treating him, and he's like, am I like that? Like, do you see me like they see that? And his sign language and his communication, you see him like understanding things, even though he's only like a handful of years old. And I think that's where it really kind of turns, that he's like, he feels like he's not, even though he's not going to part of the family. Like he feels like he's still different, or he's separate from them, and they they see him as that, which is kind of hurtful, I think, for him.
Yeah, when he asks, like, am I a pet? And Will's like, no, like, I'm your dad. You're the family.
Yeah.
I think Caesar completely understands that Will is trying to, like, Will has good intention behind it. And you understand Will's, like, the necessity of having that leash. Of course, chimps are strong. Like, that leash probably, if Caesar really lets loose, it's probably not going to hold him for
little James Franco isn't going to hold him
right
back.
Like, you're not that strong, dude. You're not the goblin on the surfboard anymore. All right, you don't got that special serum. I just Andy Serkis, dude.
We need a whole Andy Serkis segment.
We need a whole Andy Serkis segment.
First of all, I love when he's like just a regular actor. Like when you see his face in roles, he's an incredible actor. But he also does all of these kind of things.
He does these roles.
Motion capture. Yeah.
So he's Gollum, which like is groundbreaking for motion capture and CGI characters. He started it.
Yeah.
Like sorry, James Cameron, your special avatar did not start this shit. It was Andy Serkis and Peter Jackson. And you know, I always call back to him as Gollum because you're like, him as Gollum is so effective. You believe in Gollum, you sympathize with Gollum, you hate Gollum.
Right.
Like, you do all this stuff, and it's all Andy Serkis. It's his performance. They just layer the CGI look on him. And then you think back when he did the motion capture for Kong in Peter Jackson's King Kong, you're like, same thing. But instead of hating Kong, you love Kong the whole fucking movie. And when he goes, like, it's rough because there's so much emotion behind it.
Yeah.
And then I'm watching him as Caesar, and I'm like, in all three movies, all three.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, especially like prepping for this, like, how did this man not get more recognition? He literally took a CGI character that he's doing the motion capture performance of, but like he's acting it. There is more emotion in this dude in his whole performance. You understand Caesar completely. You feel everything he's going through. You're relating to him. You're fearing him. You're like worried about it. Everything.
And at no point do you even feel like, oh, that's a person doing that. You're like, no, that's an ape moving around.
You're like, this is Caesar. That's all you know him as. And I'm like, Andy Serkis should be fucking revered. This man should be like at the top of everyone's list to cast because holy hell is he good at what he does.
Yeah. And at least Fox had the, I guess, wherewithal to actually promote Andy Serkis's performance for Oscar consideration. And voters didn't go for it, but at least they tried.
Unreal to me, but I think it was on a technicality at the end of the day because you don't see the actor's face and they don't like that. And I'm like, I don't know, man, the emotion in those eyes for Caesar when he's going through some shit in all three movies, like, I feel like I'm looking right into his eyes here.
It is soul, yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah, Rise took me off guard that first time I watched it because I did not go into it expecting to get invested into it. I thought I'll watch it, maybe I won't hate it, and then I'll go and see the sequel because it's intrigued me. It's got curiosity. But the more Rise moved forward, the more I was like, this is incredible, and I don't understand how they're even gonna follow this up. Like, you're not going to. There's no way. Everything in Rise is so well done. It just is.
Yeah, and it's hard to I mean, it definitely sets up everything so well, and it sets up the you buy into the intelligence of the apes, or at least Caesar initially, and then um, you see Charles' recovery, Will's dad's recovery from Alzheimer's, and you are like so excited to it's working and everything's working, and then the other shoe kind of does drop in the sense that his dad's body starts fighting the healing or fighting the virus, or it sees it as an invader and starts the Alzheimer's starts coming back hard, and for Caesar to see that and like you said, feel like he has to protect him and all of that, when Charles goes outside and gets in the neighbor's car and is confused and just trying to drive it and starts crashing. And that neighbor is a fucking dick the entire time. Like, you constantly want him to just get his, and he does, which helps, but he is the worst neighbor to have.
Worst. You just want to hit him so hard because it's like, this is an old man who is clearly not there. Like,
right.
Something is actually wrong with this man, and your initial reaction is to like berate him and kind of get abusive with him.
Yeah, you're attacking him.
Like, I get you're pissed off that he crashed your car, but dude, like,
yeah,
you can clearly tell the dude has no idea in that moment where he's at, what he's done, what's going on. He's like, which is frightening. And Lithgow does such a great job of conveying all of the confusion and fear in such a chaotic, like, stress-inducing minute and a half scene. And of course, you're like, as the audience, you're watching Caesar sees the confrontation. You're immediately like, oh, like, this is going to be like when, Beethoven attacks the bad guy
right.
and all of a sudden everyone's going to turn on Beethoven. It's like that, and sure as shit, it happens. Granted,
yeah, Caesar does beat the shit out of him.
Caesar does, like, beat the hell out of the dude and almost bites his finger completely off. So,
yeah. He's from Caesar's perspective, he's never been in a confrontation. He's never known anything besides a peaceful life. And so I think you see it on his face that he's taken it too far, and he kind of lost control, and it scared him too a little bit, which makes it even more sad. You're like, obviously understand it was a mistake, but it's a mistake that they can't afford, and so they need to put him in the ape sanctuary because of it, which sucks.
You're just like, you're heartbroken because he was protecting his own. And you're heartbroken because like, the consequence of this is either he's going to get put down, but you're like, he's the central focal of the movie.
More movies.
So he's not getting put down. What's so much worse is when you see the sanctuary. I hate that sanctuary so much.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's terrible. It feels gross. The whole set piece that they made for this is great because you immediately are like, this is not a good place to be. Like, this immediately feels abusive and neglectful and wrong.
And there's the, like, bait and switch where they, like, bring him in this big room with the tree and all these toys, and you're like, and that's where Will leaves him.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, get the fuck out. Go in your cage, which is like this 9x9 cell. And that's where you actually live. You don't get to hang out there the whole time.
It's just when Caesar hits the wall, thinking like clouds or whatever, you just see the, like, that confusion and fear. I imagine it'd be, like a dog being abandoned or put into, like, a little cell like that where they're going to be abused or whatnot. And just that, like, confusion. It's rough.
Yeah, it does it does really affect me. Just that small scene of him kind of seeing the space and kind of getting excited. He's like, oh, this is cool. I get to climb these trees. but he immediately finds the edge, finds the wall, and he's like, oh, this is just painted sky and painted, like none of it's real. And you see him realize that he's contained and stuck in like this like false prison basically.
Right.
Which sucks. And it doesn't help that the kid that plays Draco Malfoy
that Draco shows up as the biggest douche of the movie.
He's honestly more terrible and more abusive than Draco Malfoy is. So Tom Felton shows up and is just the absolute worst person to work at an ape sanctuary.
He does a good job of conveying his character as being that guy who has like little man syndrome, right? He's going to abuse any form of power. And unfortunately, he has these apes that are behind bars that he can verbally abuse and kind of do his own attacks at his own amusement and all that. Such a douche. I hate his character so much. But good job. Good job, Tom Felton, for portraying it so well.
And I do think that it's important because I think that like it's kind of one of the main themes of the movie or all of the movies, which is even though they're animals and we have animals around us all the time, you kind of take them for granted that they're dumb, not like dumb like stupid, but dumb like, you know, the Dumb Friends League. Like they can't speak, they can't do anything else. They're animals, and so you use them for their usefulness, whether they're like help you get things done, whether you farm with them, whatever. Like they have their uses, but they're all at the end of the day not people. And so there's a lot of I think things across humanity where you just kind of take them for granted, and that's something that you get comfortable with for a very long time going through all of human history.
Right.
You get comfortable with that and just kind of start making assumptions for that. And some people take it too far for sure. And it just, I think it elevates the point when you have followed Caesar through the whole story to this specific spot in the story. And you know that he's not that. You know that he's basically human adjacent or whatever. And so to see him treated like a normal animal is a little bit more jarring than like any of the other apes that are there. But then you start seeing how the other apes are also, even though they're not injected with the 112, they still get it. Like you see Maurice and he can do sign language. He understands what's going on. He doesn't have superhuman intelligence, but he has more than enough intelligence to know where he's at and what's going on.
Well, and his warning to Caesar of like, hey, they don't like smart apes, so you need to
get in line.
You need to play it down, like put on a show for him. I love though Caesar. It's sizing up, but not in like the normal way at first. He's kind of like, he comes in, the Rocket is the one that comes over and like beats him up, bullies him, kind of shows him what's up.
He's never been in like an ape culture. Social
he has
situation.
No idea what a dynamic is.
Yeah.
And but it is, I think what makes Rise shift in intensity is how quickly Caesar just decides like, it's not so much I'm going to make the best of my situation. You literally see him just click with that, like, this is wrong on every level, so I'm going to change it. Like, you just see that, okay, no longer am I going to be abused in any form. I'm not a pet. I'm not going to be doing this. Like, I officially have to have my own way, find my way, and these apes need to know there's something different.
Yeah.
I love seeing his shift. And it happens so quick.
I think he definitely realizes that if anyone's going to change it, it's going to be him because he's in kind of a unique position to, and so he has to, even if he doesn't want to, he kind of has to. It's his job.
Well, and I think there's a lot of spite in him because his whole life was exposed to the good side of humanity, and then he's, abruptly thrown into a darker aspect of humanity, and he's seeing that darker aspect actually influence other apes. Yeah. So I think he really goes into that mind frame of like, I need to get them out of here, out of this situation, and then we can get away from that, that corrupted kind of mentality. Of course, Caesar is Caesar kind of proves himself all of a sudden where you're like, oh shit, the dude is intelligent on many levels, one of them being kind of strategic. I don't want to say warfare, but I mean, he does strategically set Rocket up to understand, like, you're not the big kid on the block. He does you see it in movies or shows about prison systems where they're like, just go and hit the big guy first. Like, he does that and wins.
Yeah, and his choice to get the gorilla on his side and the one that they're all kind of afraid of is pretty smart for sure. And so he ends up, he's got this giant gorilla, he's got Maurice, this giant orangutan, and he's got all of these other kind of smaller guys that is very quickly obvious that he is the leader of this pack of apes.
Yeah, after Rocket's beat down, and then just every, I guess, scene after that in the holding area, I love watching Caesar's mind tick and how he just starts plotting, and you understand all of his plots. I think the first couple times I saw it, I think I misinterpreted the first time when Will is finally like, Caesar, you're coming home.
Yeah.
And Caesar, denies him. I think the first time or first couple times I may have taken that as like Caesar just saying, dude, you denied me every time. I have my own path now. Which maybe it's not a misinterpretation, but now it's not so much, Will denied him. Now it's, I officially have my own path. I can't go back. Literally can't go back.
I mean, there certainly may be some hurt there that he doesn't feel like, he feels like Will abandoned him or used him. He's upset about that, I think, in some way. But I agree with you. I think that it's more that he feels like he belongs there more. Like, these are his people that he needs to be around, and because he does need to be the one to kind of help them.
Yeah.
And he can't. If he's going to go home, what's he going to do? Hang out in the house and relax and chill? Like, he was kind of has a higher purpose to help these other apes out.
Yeah, and I think his exposure to that really, I kind of revert to the idea now of like, he's been exposed to too much of what corruption can do, or like what the corrupted human side of things can do. So he has to do what he needs to do to prevent more apes from experiencing that almost.
Yeah.
Which is great. They had that kind of set up before Dawn was even being written. Now, granted, Matt Reeves scrapped the original script to do his own, but
I think so much of Rise plays into Dawn and War, and I think that, and it's so interesting. I mean, you think of the whole trilogy as kind of Matt Reeves' trilogy, even though he didn't do the first movie.
Right.
But I think that Rise does set up so much of the important things about Caesar, and just about, even though there's not much action, there's not much of any of the other stuff in the other movies. The other thing, I think, speaking of human corruption and kind of the importance of setting up the other movies, is Koba.
Yeah.
And how so in the movie, the 112 is not working well, and it's not healing Charles, and he kind of starts fighting it. And so they start developing a new drug, 113, and they need to test it on apes because they can't test it on people yet. And so they find another ape named Koba, who has apparently been in the system forever. He's been through so many different drug trials and scientific experiments, and he's just kind of been tortured, it feels like, the whole time. and he's just kind of knows the drill. And I guess an important thing that happens is during his first administration of this drug 113, things go wrong, and it kind of leaks, and a guy's mask falls off, and he gets infected with this virus. And apparently it is not for people.
It's not agreeable.
Yeah, it's bad for people because he gets very sick and disappears for a while, and then starts coughing up blood and infecting the whole world. But Koba, it does go well for, and he's kind of the antithesis to Caesar in that he has only ever seen the worst parts of humanity, and so for him to gain this increased sentience, he's in conflict with Caesar constantly through this movie in particular, but also I think Dawn is entirely story of conflict. And so this is a key point where that starts, that he's given that increased intelligence through the drug, and then all of the apes are being broken out, and Caesar is breaking out, and then giving this 113 to the rest of the apes so that they can then become more intelligent.
Yeah, Koba is he was another part of the story the first time I watched Rise, where it was like, well, this is interesting because there's not really like a defined villain, right? It's literally, this is just a story of Caesar trying to get the apes out of this corrupted part of humanity and just kind of finding his way. What is his purpose?
Yeah.
And then Koba shows up on screen. And I remember distinctly being like, oh, the villain. Like, we've been introduced to a villain. He
has a bad face.
Yeah, he is scarred up. And you feel bad for him because of the scars. And you can tell that, he's that experiment animal. You know, this is his life. So you feel a lot of sympathy for him. But those close-ups of his face are sinister. And he always had... Koba is that character where every time he's on screen, he's like the Joker, right? Where you're like, I actually don't know what he may or may not do. Like, this is a total wild card. He looks so menacing.
Yeah.
He could end up being like a hero, though. Or he could go the route that he looks, and he's going to, like, really fuck some people up. Yeah, Koba is... Man. If I was that doctor, like what's his name? The main boss man at the facility.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because he's always pushing. He tries to, like, be friendly with Koba, but it's that, like, surface friendly. And Koba totally knows the surface friendly, even before he's injected with it, because that's all he's been exposed to. Right. Man. If I would have been that boss man, I would have gotten the hell out of San Francisco so much faster. Like, that ape literally just stared me down. I'm out.
Like, memorizing your face.
There is nothing about this that is going to end well for me. I need to leave. Koba has one of my favorite scenes in Dawn, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
He's an intense character when he's on the screen. And in Rise, he doesn't really do a lot except just kind of show up.
Right. It's his introduction, basically.
Yeah. But he's effective.
he's very effective. That's basically the whole movie.
I mean,
Caesar escapes, and they inject the rest of the apes with the
yeah.
113, and then he says goodbye to Will. Will comes to try to get him and warn him that he'll be hunted.
There is like one very important scene left right before the big breakout. And that is Caesar speaking.
True. Yes.
That's kind of like the official switch in power dynamic. You know, one, he's got Tom Felton's douchey character on his knees, kind of like overpowering him. And then he's speaking, and Tom Felton can't really speak at all. And he's like cowering in fear. So I love that power shift. And even you anticipate the apes to talk just because of pop culture. And, you know, the originals, you know, the Burton, you know, the apes are going to talk.
It's got to get there eventually.
You just got to get there. But there's something about when Caesar yells no, and the fact that no is his first word, it's intense.
It's very intense. And I've always loved that from the original. You've never seen Conquest, but I've always loved the original and kind of the series itself. I mean, it was late 60s, early 70s, came out and was very kind of race-based, race-centric themes. And so for the apes to have been kind of used as experiments and used as pack animals and all these kinds of things for so long, they end up like, they get more intelligent, but then kind of like keep them in their houses and kind of just, they abuse them, and it sucks. For them to just decide to stand up, or Caesar specifically to be the first one to say, no, I'm not going to stand for this.
Yeah.
He becomes basically the Rosa Parks of the whole ape uprising. He's like, I'm not going to sit in the back of the fucking bus.
Right.
Fuck you.
Yeah. Caesar's status officially becomes like mythical or you know, like legendary. He is officially the savior of the apes for permanently down the line. And I think it's funny because if you watch trailers for Kingdom, you still see the window logo or the symbol around it. And I know Kingdom's supposed to take place like a couple hundred years after war. So I think that's like seeing that in the trailer for Kingdom and then watching Rise and knowing that was his window. Yeah. It's like Caesar
leaves a very deep imprint.
Yeah, he is
ape history.
Whew. He left an impression. Him saying no. It's just, I remember when that first time I watched it and he finally spoke, and I was just like, oh yeah, there it is. But not only are you excited that the payoff was there, that the ape finally spoke, but it's like you actually understand this is the moment of change. You brought up like the Rosa Parks moment of change. It is very concrete. There is no going back after this moment. Like the apes could all die, but it will still be revered as like the drop of the shoe. You're like, oh God, here it is.
Yeah, there's always those moments that something that you never thought was possible happens, and then you're like, well, that's a thing that can happen.
And now, that's a thing that happens. And the ripple effect of that, or the consequences of that, will be vast as we see.
Yeah, and all of culture kind of resets around that possibility or potential.
It's such a cool scene. But Caesar breaks everyone out. They do the well, it's earlier, but it is important to the story as a whole, where Caesar uses the bundle of sticks to show like strength in numbers.
Apes together strong.
Yeah. And you get to the Golden Gate Bridge because they're all gonna head to the Redwood Forest.
Yeah.
And I love the Golden Gate Bridge scene. I love that climax of like the fog coming in over the bay and the sounds, the apes on the horses, the whole battle itself. It gets a little crazy. It gets a little real crazy.
Yeah.
And
it's intense.
Every ape you see get shot down, you feel bad for, but it's kind of like, it's a cool challenge because you don't want to see them all die.
Right.
but you also know and kind of understand, like, if they all live, you know the direction that the shift is there.
Right.
So you're
Yeah,
like,
it's impending end of humanity, basically.
right, like the next extinction is upon us. Yeah, I think it's funny that the original ending was actually Will getting shot and killed trying to protect Caesar.
Okay.
But
that is interesting. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, so it was supposed to take place in the Redwood, when Will goes into the forest and Caesar comes there. I guess there was going to be a cop who followed Will into the forest and was about to shoot Caesar, and Will steps in front to intervene, and he's the one that gets shot and killed instead, and Caesar, goes away. But they felt... I guess they changed their minds, or test audiences were a little like, oh, what? And so they changed it to what it is, where it's just the farewell and that's it. That's the last time you see Will. I kind of wish they would have kept that ending, though. I think that would have been really intense for Caesar. Granted, his journey remains intense the whole way through. But I kind of like that idea more than just being the assumption that Will died of the virus.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, having heard it for the first time right now, I have mixed feelings about it. Like, I like what we have.
Yeah.
I like how how Caesar's journey, it kind of starts out very much invested in humanity and a part of it and understanding it and loving these people, and they're so kind to him, and then kind of dipping down into seeing the worst parts of humanity, not the worst, but pretty bad parts of humanity, and growing anger and frustration, borderline hate towards those people. Having that, if they change that ending, there would be certainly an interesting conflict between good people and bad people. Like, he cares about this person, but they also took that person from him. Like, that there's that conflict between that. And so I think he would understand the complexity of human beings maybe earlier, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's certainly true. But I also like how the story ends up going, where he kind of starts learning more like, humans are dangerous, they're bad, they cause all these problems, and then finds his way back to believing in that there's also good people and they also can be good and all that stuff. He kind of remembers what it was like 10 years later. Yeah. I mean, I think it works both ways. And I think that's probably a testament to the writing and the story and the characters, that it feels real, and whichever choice you make or whichever direction you go in life, it all works because it's all real, and there's not really a bad answer because it's all true, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting conclusion to Rise. Unlike you, I'm totally okay with the way it does end. I think either ending, well, we know that the actual ending definitely works in showing Caesar's growth and understanding. I think had Will gotten shot on screen and killed in front of Caesar, I think that would have maybe had a bigger impact on Caesar with the ape not kill ape rule that he has set up in the sequels, because that's a big part for him in Dawn and War is apes. He sees the apes having an opportunity to do better than what humans ended up doing. He sees that as an opportunity of actual growth, actual community. And so he's trying so hard to prevent it, but protect against, threats. So it's very interesting. Very interesting.
That's one of my favorite things about it. And you do see a lot of it at the beginning of Rise, or of Dawn rather, that I get the two confused, because Rise and Dawn, it's like sunrise, dawn, it's the same thing. I don't understand. Weird words to choose. But at the beginning of Dawn, you definitely see that a lot. And you see how successful their community has become, and you see kind of Caesar as their leader enforcing those rules that apes do not kill apes.
Yeah.
And you kind of see it's very smart of him to see that as their opportunity at the beginning of their civilization, that they have that ability, if they can, to come together and be stronger together to survive all of the other chaos that's around them. But also to have that, I guess you would say, tribalism, that they are a tribe and they are all the same. It's not like gorillas versus orangutans versus chimpanzees versus like sub races, I guess. And you just feel like that's something that we missed as humans. Like, we're all human beings. If you can see yourself as all of the same thing and avoid and actually treat each other like you're all the same, that is a huge asset. And I think that Caesar maintains it as long as he can, and it's definitely an asset for them.
Yeah, and Dawn does a great job of showing when conflict or threats, new conflict or new threats arrive, which they inevitably will. It's a test for your tribe, your community, to see just how strong you actually are as a unit. And there's always so many little sneaky things that can happen. And Dawn does such a perfect job of just showing you can have this super strong community, but something's always going to be there to chip away.
There's a couple of big messages that I get out of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. One in particular is that those little sneaky things that one bad apple can spoil the bunch, and it happens on both sides. You have the apes who are together strong, but it just takes one person or one ape to fuck it all up. And the same exact thing happens on the people side, that the people are very much like, we don't want any problems, we don't want any of this. And then there's that one asshole who's like, I'm just gonna screw this all up for everybody. and he does, and it totally sucks. You're so annoyed with that guy.
It's so crazy, the consequences of that one, of both assholes in both camps.
Yeah.
The ripple effect that their decisions have are just like these massive things that are another thing I think we tend to take for granted or just choose to completely ignore of, well, if I do this, who will it might affect down the road, or how will it affect me farther down the road? No one ever thinks that way.
Right.
I'm definitely one who never thinks that way, and I usually find myself like, what the fuck, how did I get here?
Relying on hindsight in the future, hopefully.
So Dawn is my personal favorite in the trilogy.
Me too, actually, for a lot of reasons.
It's so good. I will say this. I saw it in the theater after having seen Rise and being excited after Rise, and then watching Dawn. I was stoked for Dawn, loved it, thought it was fantastic. Came out, I bought it, loved it. Whatever, War came out, loved it, you know. And then the pandemic happened. And I have to share the story.
Yeah.
And it was like a little bit into when everything was shut down and you couldn't do shit. You couldn't go anywhere except work if you were essential. And
quote unquote essential.
Quote unquote, yeah. You had to have your papers. That was a real thing for generations that might not remember that. Or too young to understand it.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, I haven't watched the Apes trilogy for a minute, so I'm going to watch the Apes trilogy. Watch Rise.
I completely forgot the whole virus thing from Rise. And so it starts happening. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then you start Dawn and you're like, oh, fuck.
I'm watching Dawn and I'm like, I don't know if I can watch this right now because
it's exactly the same.
Same.
It feels like they made it after COVID. Like, it's the weirdest feeling to watch it.
It's the weirdest fucking feeling. And I've watched this trilogy a couple times since then, and I always, when I start Dawn, I find myself being like, this is your moment to like scroll your phone, go get something to drink. We don't need that reminder. If I have one critique over Dawn, it's that opening is just, it turned out to be a little too real.
Yeah, it's so insane that it came out so many years before that happened.
It's insane.
And I know there were big pandemics before that, but it's like it's just so specific to our experience in 2020 and 2021.
The opening of Dawn, the montage of all of it is like, you got to wear masks. You need to isolate. You need to quarantine. You can't be going to work. More businesses are shutting down in lieu of the sickness. And you're like,
the government's taking over.
The government's taking over. You're like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
But I digress. Frightening. Dawn is incredible from the first frame to the last. It is.
It's unbelievably good. Good looking. In particular, there's so many incredible shots in it, but the cast as well is
the cast.
I'm a massive fan of Kerry Russell. I'm a massive fan. Everybody's a massive fan of Gary Oldman, but I also love Jason Clarke, and everybody in this movie is so good.
And you can just tell they were all like, they believed in this project. Everyone is a part of this story, and Dawn is a big scope compared to Rise.
Oh yeah.
It's a big scope. And it's kind of crazy how fast Dawn escalates.
Right.
Because you get the hunting scene in the opening, which is pretty cool. And it's actually like, I saw a thing, it's the first Planet of the Apes installment, originals, reboot, and these, that accurately portrayed chimpanzees to be omnivores.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I thought, well, that's such an interesting detail to like keep or at least show. And I really respect that little detail. I don't know why, but it just felt like,
yeah, it's an interesting thing. I think I remember feeling when I first saw it, I was like a little bit, I don't know, off put that they're eating meat, like they're hunting for meat. And then I was like, why am I off put? Like I hunt for meat. Like I don't understand. You just feel a little different because you always think of like, oh, they're chimpanzees. They eat bamboo. They they're just little cute.
They definitely hunt animals in the wild, and they eat meat as well. It's a part of their actual diet. So I thought that's a cool, like, just to add more realism to this. Like, I like that. I really respect that decision by Matt Reeves.
And it feels like they're at war, like they're wearing paint, they're all organized, they have spears and all stuff, and then you realize they're hunting, and you're like, oh, this is really interesting.
It's very tribal. It's very tribal, very, very tribal, which is really cool. I really respect that take on it, that kind of callback, because they're very much, they have no technology. They're stripped of technology. Everything has to be natural. You have to go and find it. You have to, and it's very much like another notch on that lesson tool belt we're supposed to be learning of like humanity has lost touch with a lot, and we're so dependent on so much where the actual like necessities are what we've taken for granted. And I like that contrast.
Definitely one of the messages I get from the movies, because the human beings are very focused on it. We need power. We need electricity to survive and turn the lights on. And then you have all of these apes that are like, I don't give a fuck about power. Like, I have fire, I have a house, I have my family, I have food, I have weapons. Like, what else do you need? And it does feel like all the humans are just focused on getting back to where they were, as opposed to starting something new. And the apes are starting something new. They're building their new history, kind of starting at the beginning, and they're content with that. Right. And I think that is a lot of their strength, that they can just, they're just together and they're building their lives.
Yeah, it is a very stark reminder that humanity is desperate when it comes to like holding on to, or dependent. We're so dependent. We're desperately dependent on our technology, and it's just like it doesn't work out that well. Like you got to learn how to be able to adapt, and humans don't adapt that well in this changing world in the Apes trilogy. They really don't.
No, they struggle for sure. I love this movie in particular because I think so it starts 10 years after the first movie, and I think that Caesar is of course my favorite part because his journey, I think he's justifiably frustrated and angry at the end of Rise. But by the time you get into Dawn, he is, I think, he's matured over the last 10 years. And I think not just being the leader of all of the apes and they're kind of their de facto president or whatever, he's also become a father and he's started having children. And I think that, at least that's the message I get out of it. Maybe I'm seeing myself, but I definitely know that once you start having children, you start seeing beyond yourself, beyond your life, and into future generations and what all of the things you're doing, how those will affect everybody to come. And so I think that you see in his thought process and in his face and in his decision making, taking all of that into account. And that very much, and a lot of the apes don't understand that, why he's so opposed to going to war, why he's so cautious or diplomatic in the way that he approaches the conflicts with the human beings, because others like Koba and others, they are quick to take offense, quick to like. I think one of the other themes of the movie is the romanticization of war that especially younger generations or young men have of war, is that, oh, we need to do it, we need to go battle, we're going to be tough, it's going to be awesome, and the wisdom of older generations is that you don't want to do that. You want to avoid that at all costs because you will lose a lot of lives. And that's Caesar's whole thing, that we would need to do everything possible to avoid war with these people, because if we do, a lot of apes are going to die. And jumping to the end of the movie, he's absolutely right.
Absolutely correct. Yeah.
And everybody realizes that he's right way too late, because they all see their brothers and children and wives dying around them. And it's so impactful. And I love the arc of this movie.
Yeah. Caesar's whole, I'm with you on that. The way he perceives life, it's no longer necessarily reactionary. He's thinking about, my decisions dictate the future generation. And especially as the leader of the apes, it's even a bigger burden of him to understand that. And, he's trying to just make good by his family. His wife is sick. He has a newborn. His eldest son is kind of like angsty, angry teenager, almost like jealous of the younger brother. Kind of feeling separated a little bit.
And starting to get to that age where you start questioning your dad's like wisdom.
Right.
Like, maybe he doesn't know what's best for us. Maybe I know better, kind of thing. That arrogance, I guess, you get.
Which is a very troublesome mentality that we as humans have, is, well, I could do this better over someone. And I'm not discrediting that completely. There are times where I think a different approach is good, or a different way of seeing it is good.
But you can jump to those assumptions without knowing why he's making those decisions, or his experience.
If it's a rash decision, or if it's done out of spite, that's when it can be very dangerous. And Dawn does a great job of showing spiteful reaction and spiteful, well, I'll do better. I'll show them. Freaking Koba, man.
Yeah, that's Koba's whole thing.
Yeah, Koba, when the humans and the apes meet each other for the first time, it's kind of intense. And by kind of, I mean, it's really intense, because
the standoff.
One of the children has been shot, And that's immediately like, well, this guy's gonna just die.
Yeah. Yeah. For you to kill that child, the child of one of the other apes there, like that's an act of war in of itself.
That's an act of war in of itself. And but he doesn't kill the other one, he just shoots him. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, he just shoots him in like the shoulder.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because that child doesn't die.
Yeah.
You're thinking of war.
Yeah, I am thinking of
war. By the way, folks, I hope you have seen this trilogy. If you haven't,
yeah, I'll put it in the description or whatever. This is the whole point of the episode, is explaining what happened, how we got here.
But they're like, Caesar kind of reluctantly listens to the humans. He understands that Jason Clarke's character is sincere in his plea and he's trying to be, civil. Mm-hmm. And so I think Caesar respects that. He doesn't trust it, but he respects that. Yeah. Like, okay, this guy's not trying to fight, and I've seen the good. So you see that, like, his background is still there. Like, not all humans are bad.
And I think he's trying to give them enough that he will earn goodwill, that they will agree to leave them alone. Like, he just wants you to not fuck with him. Right. And he's like, if you just let us live in the forest, we'll be happy.
Yeah, just leave us alone. That's like, literally, not you do you, forget we even exist. Just, we don't ever have to see each other again. Of course, Jason Clarke is like irritatingly stubborn, but you understand him and you're with him, but you're like, dude, like, Caesar is going to have a, like, okay, I'm done.
He's very bold to be like, do not come back in the forest. And Jason Clarke's like, hey, I'm going to go back in the forest real quick. And just ask him. Maybe I'll just ask him to see if he's cool with it. Like, no, dude. Like, he's not going to be cool with it.
I mean, Caesar kind of hears him out. But again, that's Caesar just understanding that he has to have more knowledge and he has to be diplomatic. He's going to have to compromise a little bit because he's trying to secure a future. He's not so much fighting for the future, but securing it, knowing there is a future. He's got a family. He's got this whole tribe that he's trying to keep alive. And it's sad because Koba is instantly on the only way we have a future is exterminating all of them.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that it works so well that you get his side, at least in the beginning, that he is more questioning of the humans' motives than Caesar is. And so he does a little investigation and sees they have a ton of weapons, and you're like, you understand that he feels that there's more of a reason to be concerned about the humans' motives, even though as the audience, we know that Jason Clarke and his conversations with Gary Oldman are more sincere. Yeah. But from the outside looking in, you see them have this giant armory and shooting all of these guns. And you're like, yeah, they must be preparing for war. This must be a problem. And so you understand why Koba is concerned about it and frustrated that Caesar's not taking it seriously.
And it's another one of those natural things where when we are hesitant about something or don't fully trust something and we come across a piece of evidence that is going to support that distrust, it fuels it and it makes us more passionate about it. And so we'll ride that as far as we can, right? We're going to scream it from the mountaintop. So Koba does exactly that. I think it's hilarious. Well, no, wrong word. I'm sorry. I think it's very telling.
Yeah.
How we as a human audience relate so deeply with these primate characters because we totally see all of our species in both, all how we think, how we,
relate,
figure things out, conclude. Like, it's crazy. And Koba, you're like, dude, I know exactly the path you're going down, because we may not have gone that extreme, but there's always those ideals that we get stuck in and we are passionate about, and sometimes they get us into trouble. And Koba,
and there's also that, I don't know if there's a word for it, I'm sure there is, but there's that thing that you kind of will only see what you're looking for. And so if you're looking for something, a confirmation bias, I guess is what it is, that if you're looking for something and you find it, you're going to jump to the conclusion that, oh, that's what that means, because that's what I was fearing, that's what I would see. And I saw it, and it couldn't possibly be anything else.
Right. So when Koba sees the guys firing guns off, his first thought is, yep, they're getting ready. They're going to storm the forest. They're going to wipe us out. Whereas you, the audience, know the conversation was, we're just going to double check in case they invade us. Like, we need to just be ready.
Yeah, it's not, they're being defensive, but it's misinterpreted as offensive. I love... I think it's the second time that Koba goes to see the guys at the shooting off.
One of my favorite scenes in the movie.
See his brilliance. Brilliance is the wrong word, but he's extremely intelligent, more than you expect. I think that plays possum with them, that he just reverts back to, he knows their expectation of him, having been in the system and in experiments so much, that he's like, oh, I'll just be silly. I'll be a funny monkey guy, and they will disarm them, and they'll be all bored with it. And the way that he manipulates them is so brilliant, up until the point where he murders them.
Right. Yeah, it's one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie, because it is such an effective scene. You know it's coming.
Yeah.
It's not like it's surprising or it takes you off guard. But what makes it so effective to me is you can feel the whole tone like drop. Like, you feel everything just like, ooh, we're officially past the point of no return. Like, that's where we are now. Yeah, when Koba does the whole dumb monkey act for him, and they're laughing, he's laughing with them. When he pulls that trigger, though, it's just like an instant, just oof.
Yeah.
Like, official. You've been waiting for this kind of moment to show up, and here it is. And you just...
the shot heard around the world again.
Yeah, and it's such an effective scene. It's so fast. It's crazy to me, because I was like, the first time I saw this, I thought it, like, stayed quiet for way longer, but it's actually a pretty quick scene, but it's so effective that it just lingers in your head. And then as you see Koba coming back to the tribe, and you understand pretty fast, like, this isn't fully Koba against the humans. This is officially Koba versus Caesar. And that
he needs to, in order to secure the beginning of this war, he needs to instigate the first false flag of ape history, where he needs to murder Caesar and then pin it on the humans as having murdered him, so that all the apes will want to go to war.
And we've definitely jumped leap years here. That's one of my other favorite scenes, is actually the camp. So, they've gotten the power restored from the dam, and Caesar's wife is healthy again, because Jason Clarke's wife, or his girlfriend, has kind of helped her feel better with antibiotics, and there's peace, and you feel like there's trust. Caesar and Jason Clarke's character have had discussions over trust and kind of friends, and understand. I think they both understand that there are rough folk in both camps, but end of the day, they need to at least know they can trust each other. Like, at least we have that baseline. And when Koba shows up and incites his coup Ta. Like, my favorite part of that scene is Maurice. When he looks at the humans and you finally hear him talk, where it's just run. Like, every time I watch it, I wait for it. He says run, and immediately I'm like, good God, you got to get the hell out of there. Like,
yeah. I definitely love how he looks out for them, that he knows that they are in danger and knows that they're not part of the problem and that they kind of need to be cared for. Maurice is such a great character.
Maurice is awesome because he disagrees with quite a bit of how Caesar is seeing things, but he has full understanding of where Caesar's coming from. And if he doesn't understand it, he has pretty honest conversations with Caesar. And I love their scenes together because Maurice challenges Caesar almost every scene they're together, or reminds him of values and kind of the morals that they have been trying to build this life with. And Caesar is also challenging Maurice to see things from, like, I have to view it from this kind of point of view. I have to, diplomatic. I have to compromise certain things so that we can secure this later down the road. And I just love that dynamic, and you trust Maurice so much. And I love how Maurice, thanks to Caesar, even though he was in the system too, is more open to accepting the good in humans. So him and the son, I think that's a cool dynamic. It's an effective dynamic for only having a couple scenes where they're together, but it's very effective. Matt Reeves is like, he's the man, dude. He's so good at doing this. And I have a lot of respect for how Reeves like told this story, because he definitely builds off of Rise perfectly and then did his own thing, but it's so smooth.
Yeah.
And it's so nice. There's like never a clunky moment. It flows.
Yeah. It flows, and it flows. All of the different pieces work well together, and Caesar and Koba, their stories work together. You mentioned Jason Clarke's girlfriend, not wife, a second ago, Kerry Russell's character. I really like how their relationship kind of is another layer of the same overall themes of the movie, which is that she's and him and his son are kind of not feeling like they want to be part of the same family, but they're not really part of the same family, and she's having trouble connecting to the son, and there's that disconnect of trust and feeling connected and all that, feeling different and not really related, and she ends up being able to connect to the son, or eventual hopeful stepson, through sharing her own daughter or child that she lost, and kind of opens him up, and then their interactions with the apes and stuff, that kind of become this really cute little mixed family.
They really do, and it's almost like a counseling unit, right? Like a group therapy kind of thing, where they actually connect and understand each other better through grief. Everyone understands we've all had massive losses, so this is kind of connecting us all. And I like that.
They have that in common.
The son, he is pretty like disconnected from her for most of the movie, but when she opens up about her daughter, I think it's told really well, or shown really well, of him having that like, oh, like she needs us just as bad as we need her. I kind of like, I like that kind of showman, or not showman, but that the way that Reeves portrayed that, and Kerry Russell, when she tells the story of her daughter, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, so shoot Caesar.
And it's I love, I think one of the best things that this movie does, I think that the movie has to do, is show why they can't just, why you have to end up in the future where it's one or the other, why it's apes or humans for dominance of the planet. Why can't they just live together and in harmony or separately or have a peace or whatever? And it's because of this, that there's that fear or conflict of the potential of the other group, and what they're capable of, or what they're thinking, or what they want from you. And it's a tale as old as time. It's based so much in history, and it's so well portrayed, I think, that it shows you why it hasn't worked, why it will never work, that this is kind of the way that it has to go.
Yeah.
That no matter how hard you try, no matter how hard Caesar tries, he's just prolonging the inevitable, that he's buying as much peace as he can, but he can't control everything, and there's always that thing that gets out of hand. That and if you don't have Caesar, if you don't have the one person who everybody follows and understands and trusts, then it falls apart very quickly. And so taking Caesar out of the equation is definitely that thing that just makes the whole house of cards come crumbling down.
And it's fast. Koba takes advantage of it instantly, and the raid onto the humans is like, you said it earlier, where every ape, well, not every, most of the apes kind of finally understand, like, oh shit, this is what Caesar has been warning us about and trying to get across, of like, you don't just go in guns blazing, it won't work out like you think. And
right.
I think what makes it so effective is that Caesar's son is like Koba's right hand man in this whole thing. Just under, he doesn't know Koba was the one that pulled the trigger on his dad.
Yeah, and Koba believes that he's corrupted. Koba doesn't believe he's corrupted him, but we as the audience believe that Koba's corrupted him enough that he will follow him, until you realize that there's enough. Caesar has instilled enough goodness in him that he is able to kind of see what's going on and resist it.
I think it's a rough lesson for the son to learn, because he sees all the apes falling in battle. He sees them getting blown up or shot up. But when they finally like kind of overtake the human city, and he watches Koba straight up murder Ash, another ape, simply because Ash just doesn't do what Koba says right away.
Fall in line, yeah.
I think that's the like, oh shit, what did we just do?
Yeah.
And it's not a like, oh shit, what did I really always take it as a like collective oh shit moment of just, oh crap, we just followed the wrong guy. Like, we just made our bed. I don't think we can lie in this one kind of mentality, right?
Yeah. That you realize too late that there were so many great reasons why Caesar had those rules, and what the consequences of not having those rules are. If apes do start killing apes, then you're no better than the humans, and also you're going to end up with the same outcome as the humans.
Yeah, eventually it's a real nasty spiral.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Caesar's not dead. You can't kill Caesar yet.
And I love that they take him back to his home, his first home, Will's house, and you see the window, and you see the symbol, and that kind of becomes a symbol of the resistance for all of the other apes. They're like, this is Caesar. If you're actually true to Caesar and you really want to follow him, whether he's alive or not, you want to follow his principles, then you got to get behind this symbol.
Yeah. And I loved going back to the house. It's crazy because it's the immediate sequel There had only been a couple years in between, but even when you watch it back to back, it still feels like a lot of time has gone.
It feels like more than 10 years, which is what it's been in the story.
Yeah, and you feel that weight on Caesar of returning and just seeing, finding the video camera from that tape when he was a baby still, or a young chimp, and him in his room again, and just, I think it gives him an opportunity to actually, I guess, properly say goodbye to all of it. And then, of course, it helps that, like, his son shows up and Jason Clarke is like, shit just hit the fan, dude. We need you to get strong again. This is no good. Koba is the villain that everyone thought he was going to end up being. He is this guy now. He really is.
It's like a Princess Bride moment where you're like, just pretend to be stronger than you are, because we need something. Like we really need to just show strength here.
Well, and it's relying heavily on, like, just the sight of Caesar will incite fear in everyone that kind of betrayed the morals that he's been trying to instill in everyone. But more importantly, you instill fear in Koba, because now he's gonna, like, oh shit, I'm not good enough to even kill him when I have the perfect opportunity, or now I have to rely on strength, which Koba already knows he's not as strong as Caesar, because Caesar has beat the shit out of him before. So,
right. Yeah, he's the natural leader because he's basically won that position many times.
Yeah. So, yeah, their fight on the tower, it's so crazy to me. I mentioned earlier the escalation of Dawn, and it's like, every 15 minutes of this movie, it's like, and we've escalated again. So you're just like constantly on this roller coaster of just, good Lord.
Like, yeah, and then the humans are enslaved, and then the tower is being torn down, and then all the Caesar is back, but they're fighting, and yeah, it's crazy.
And they have an awesome hand-to-hand combat fight at the top of going up the tower, and shit's been blown up. Like, shit's about to really blow up because there's all these explosives.
All of the movement in these movies is so incredible, and it's very kinetic every way that it moves, but it also feels so natural that they absolutely did their homework on how apes move, not just like standing and walking around, but like the very quick movements, or grabbing this and swinging from that, and it feels so incredible for something that is not real. Like, it's all but they did a great job.
They did an amazing job. It's kind of cool knowing that Rise, or no, maybe it was Dawn. No, it's Dawn, was the first movie to do on location caption motion, or caption motion. Yeah.
Motion caption. Yeah.
It's late. And, I think that's pretty cool that they managed to achieve on location. It helps with the movement. It helps with all this. And what's even crazier is, like, they cast actual actors. It wasn't like just stunt people. Like Judy Greer plays Cornelia, Caesar's wife. And that one always blows my mind. I'm like, Judy Greer, like...
Yeah, it's always funny to me when I look at the cast in all of these movies, because I'm like, wait, these are all real characters, like real actors. I'm like, I barely remember you talking, but you mostly are just acting, like, physically in all of these roles.
Ooh, excuse me. Yeah, it's so much fun watching that, or just knowing that and watching the movie. Yeah, their fight, it's kind of a bummer when Caesar has to kill Koba.
Yeah.
Not because, like, Caesar's going to kill Koba, but because Koba has to die. There's no other outcome for him. But it's like Caesar has to break his one rule. It's like watching Superman kill Zod all over again.
It's 100% what I was thinking of. It's so sad because he is your brother. He's your countryman. He's your whatever. But at the same time, you can't let him live.
You can't. There's no other outcome available. And I think you can see it all over Caesar. And I think Caesar has to like completely disconnect from Koba. And that's why he tells him, like, you're not an ape. Because Koba tries to throw the rule back in his face, you know, ape not kill ape. He's like, you're not an ape, dude. And I always take that as like, you have blatantly gone against everything that makes us who we are or what we are. You can't like, you're not us. And I think Koba's death is pretty brutal just on that aspect of him going out knowing that he was like completely blacklisted.
Yeah.
Like you belong nowhere, which is essentially sending him right back to how he was already brought up in the human world of you are nothing, you don't belong anywhere, you're just an object. It's pretty brutal, but Koba's a mass murdering fuckhead, so at the same time you're like,
yeah, I mean, you feel bad in the sense that what else was he going to do? Like, that's kind of the spot that his path brought him to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the whole point of redemption is to choose something different and to choose to rise above it, and he just doesn't. He's not morally strong enough. And so he does just succumb to it, and it sucks, but it is, and it is what it is, and he's the bad guy, and fuck him.
And fuck him. And then and then you've got like Jason Clarke's character, who I can't remember his name for the life of me. And Caesar having to part ways. This is a rough scene for me. Like, it's a heavy scene, I should say, because this is twice for Caesar that he has to like say goodbye to a human that he's trusted and considered a friend or family or an equal. He's constantly having to just like, okay, I have to cut ties with you now. And I like that, you know, Clark's character is telling him there doesn't have to be like this. They connected with this military group, but we can figure a way. And Caesar's like, you don't get it. This is the only direction left. Like, there is going to be conflict. There is war.
Once the cat's out of the bag, it's just, we can't do anything to stop it now because they won't believe us and they don't trust us. And why would they? And we don't trust them because they're trying to murder us. And
why would we?
Spiraling. Yeah. It's wise of Caesar to realize that, though.
It is. And it's such a good setup into war.
Yeah.
Oh, war.
War is intense, and I love it almost as much as Dawn because it's just as good on so many levels, but it is much more focused on the war and the battle and the survival themes, and not so much on the leadership and the family and all of the other kind of stuff, which is I think a little more interesting.
It shows us a side of Caesar that we haven't seen, but I think have always suspected it to be there, because he does get put into a position where he no longer thinks diplomatically. He gets put on kind of the same path as Koba was. Like, he very much mirrors Koba's mentality. His is a little more reserved, but he's still very much driven on vengeance and hatred than what he's been doing for 2 previous movies. Or because war even takes place, what, like 4 years after Dawn?
2 years after the Battle of San Francisco. Yeah.
And it's just, it's interesting. Like, Caesar's been so well grounded for 12 years that now he's kind of broke. And you understand why he's broke. I mean, he's tired, but Woody Harrelson does a pretty good job of playing this general, folks. He's a little...
Yeah, he's nefarious for sure.
He's nefarious. And war always gets to me because it's very intense. I think they do a really good job of like not being so battle driven, which is interesting that it's war and there's not battle scene after battle scene or even really huge battle scenes. There's like a couple.
Yeah,
but
there's like 2 like significant battle fights.
But I think the title also kind of reflects like the war, you know, within Caesar of just understanding, well, shit, now I've kind of lost control, and because he loses control, the ripple effect is pretty bad. It doesn't work out great.
Yeah, and just the state that they're in, that there is no going back from this. They're at war no matter what, and the people are there's no friends other than the apes around you, basically.
Right, like and you have to be able to trust them, and when you meet a new one who's like the goofy smart monkey,
yeah,
you find yourself kind of untrustworthy of him. And I think that's also such a human thing of meeting someone new or unexpected. There's an immediate reservation and kind of trying to figure out, well, what's your motive? What are you really trying to get out of me?
And I think the movie also sets that up. It sets the audience up to expect that too, in an interesting way, where in the beginning you meet a new ape, Winter, the white gorilla, and he ends up betraying the group and betraying Caesar. And so at that point you're like, oh, the apes are no longer together strong. Like some of them are playing the human side, some of them are now on still on Caesar's side. And I think that's the most interesting. It always freaks me out when the soldiers are like creeping through the jungle and they're trying to take out some apes, and then you see the gorilla come up and like tap him on the shoulder. You're like, oh, he's gonna get fucked up now.
And you're like, oh no, he's with them.
He's a friend. Yeah. And he's actually like helping them and coordinating, and you're like, what is happening? But it's so brilliant. I mean, that's absolutely something that happens all the time, that there's people that support the rebellion, and there's people that support the insurgency or whatever, the not the insurgency but the empire establishment, the loyalists. In every revolution there's been that, so it's so brilliant.
And it's interesting to me too, because all the apes that are with the humans, they're all called donkeys and mules. Like, and they're accepting of this because they're under the guise that's their survival.
Right. But they'll just accept that abuse in order to be on the winning side.
And in my head the whole time, all I kept thinking is, that first time I watched it, was like, they don't comprehend that once like Caesar is taken out, once his faction is gone, all these donkeys, all these apes that have sided with the humans, like they're probably going to get taken out. Like,
right, you're still
going to get
a threat. You're still a smart, really strong ape.
And I love how this movie shows kind of the coin flip for humans, where when you meet the little girl for the first time, you know, she's mute. And I love that Maurice takes her under his wing and like kind of adopts her.
Yeah.
But I love that when you first meet her, at least for me, I always took her muteness at first as like, she is traumatized. She's seen too much trauma.
Yeah.
And going mute is a side effect that can happen for people that just go through too much. Of course, then you learn like the people who were immune to the virus are now kind of de-evolving and forgetting how to speak and how to do basic function skills. And I love learning that. I think that's such a cool, like, an extra challenge for mankind of like, eventually we will be kind of the new ape of the planet.
Yeah. And it's such a great, for someone who is a fan of the original one, you're kind of waiting to see how we get back there. Like that's always been the starting point of how do we get back to the place where apes rule the world, humans are subjugated and mute and kind of wild animals in a weird way, and then the cycle kind of repeats itself where a human who can speak comes and helps the apes see the humans as like more than what they think they are. And so it's just a back and forth thing throughout history.
It's almost like we're constantly being taught lessons, or at least attempted teaching of lessons.
We have a lot of opportunities to learn.
We have a lot of opportunities to learn.
Yeah. The problem is we die and the next generation has to figure it out all over again.
And no one likes learning history. It's almost like they ignore where the answers to the problems are.
Yeah. And that's one of the, going back to Dawn, that's another thing I get is that some people figure it out. Some people know exactly what to do. Some people know how to get along and what we need to do. But not everybody listens to that person. Some people do, some people don't. Some people cause more problems, and you can't control everything. It's just a clusterfuck of a million different people.
Giant cluster. It's why the perfect utopia doesn't exist. And if you do manage to create the perfect utopia, then it's got to be like Equilibrium, where they've removed all emotion out of the equation.
Yeah, the only way you can do that is forcing a bunch of people into doing things.
Turning people into like mindless drones, and that's a worse fate almost. So up for debate, but not really, because emotions are good for you. We just have to learn how to process
live with
them. But we digress, people.
The journey of kind of Caesar after his wife and son are killed by the humans in that raid, and he does kind of snap and choose to go after them and wants all the other apes to be okay and kind of sends them on their way, but then a handful go with him, choose to like stay with him, and Maurice is certainly one of them, and he rescues that little girl. I always giggle though when you see that giant gorilla get on that little horse.
Oh yeah,
and I'm like, that poor horse.
I think that too.
And then there's a point where they like lose a horse, and then there's like the giant gorilla and another ape on the same horse. I'm like, damn, that poor horse. But you mentioned the new ape, the
Bad Ape,
kind of what? Yeah, his name is Bad Ape, which is played by Steve Zahn, and I love him. He's probably the highlight of the movie for me. That he's particularly because he like was in this zoo, was kind of alone, and didn't really have any of the social interaction, and kind of just chose survival by himself. And so he has no social skills with anybody, and can talk, but talks in kind of a different, broken way. And so I love how they kind of learn to get to know him and trust him. And then there's a portion of the movie where Caesar has to go off and do other stuff, and so it's Bad Ape and Maurice and the one other chimpanzee, I forget his name, but Bad Ape's the only one that can talk, but he doesn't know sign language, and so Maurice is like trying to sign to him, and they are struggling to communicate. It's a fun like little dynamic that they have in the middle of this very dark and serious situation.
Yeah, I remember watching it for the first time, and when Bad Ape showed up, I remember kind of feeling like Caesar and Maurice, and I think it's Rocket that's with them. No. Yeah, it's Rocket.
It must be Rocket.
Yeah, it's Rocket. And, they're kind of reserved against Bad Ape. And I remember feeling the same way where it was like, ooh, am I going to like that? Like he's kind of obnoxious, but he's not obnoxious. He's just been isolated like himself for so long that he's just like, I don't know how to actually so I'm just going to keep going and keep going and keep going.
Yeah. And I'm excited to have some friends.
He is very intelligent. He's also the first ape that wears clothes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is supposed to be like kind of showing apes officially kind of taking on the human role. Is now they're going to start wearing clothing, which is a new thing. And but my favorite part with him is actually that first conversation they have when they're in his little home, and the little girl keeps holding up the Nova sign, and he keeps like, "Don't touch that. No, don't touch." But he does it like mid sentence, like a parent does to their child, where you don't actually like interrupt your conversation. You just that becomes a part of it, right? Oh no, not yours. Don't touch that. So, anyways, blah 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 blah. No, I said don't touch that. I love that, and I'm like, every time I watch it, I'm like, God, it flows so flawlessly, and I love that he doesn't do the normal thing where like he'd be so, oh my God, what is she doing here? He's just simply like, no,
possessive or defensive or whatever.
I love Bad Ape. I think he's fun, and I always forget that it's Steve Zahn doing the voice. And every time I watch it, I'm always like, I know this voice. Oh yeah, it's Steve Zahn.
Yeah, me too. He's great.
Bad Ape is fantastic. And I do love those dynamics of like, he has a higher like speech capability, whereas Maurice is still very sign language heavy. And I love the like, Bad Ape doesn't even understand the grunts, which is kind of a scary thing for the apes though, because that's like basic
kind of a wild card
communication skills, and he doesn't have that.
Yeah, he's just kind of been isolated in the zoo and then isolated in this cold area that he's in, surviving, and he doesn't get any of it. And so you feel like he's a liability for most of the movie. You're like, he's gonna fuck something up, like he's gonna expose them, he's gonna do something stupid, and he doesn't really. He's actually really helpful and awesome. He's a great character.
I think I think it was a smart decision to not have him fuck anything up and to actually be useful, not only to their kind of mission, but the conclusion of their mission, and just saving apes and this girl. And Bad Ape is great. I like him more and more every time I rewatch the trilogy.
I think especially after you've seen it the first time and all of your misgivings about his character are kind of put to bed, then you can enjoy him more after that, I think.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, you mentioned Woody Harrelson as the Colonel and how formidable he is. I think as the consequences of Dawn was that they contacted the army who had all organized up north and were coming down to basically put down the ape uprising or squash the apes that they knew were around. And he is good at his job, I guess you would say. And takes a lot of pride in that, and is very much in control of the situation and in control of, through fear mostly, all of the other apes and soldiers around him. But the most of the movie, it feels like, takes place in that prison or that camp that they
way up north
take over. It's hinted at that they must be going up there to meet the rest of the army that's coming down to help them, and then you learn later that no, actually this guy's kind of a rogue element, and the rest of the army is not on board with his operation.
Right.
And so there's a kind of a civil war among the human beings as well as a war with the apes at the same time.
Go figure, right?
Tale as old as time.
Everyone's killing each other off. It's crazy.
Yeah, nobody can get along. But his whole, I guess, my mind always jumps to the end, and I don't necessarily want to jump to the end, but the way that he feels about the apes and the way he feels about their intelligence, and particularly Caesar, he definitely, I think, kind of respects Caesar, and not in like a peer kind of way, but in more of a, oh, good for you. Like, you're a smarter than your average monkey kind of
well, he's
way.
Yeah, he views Caesar as like, oh, you might be a worthy adversary. Like,
Yeah.
and
You're higher than what I expected.
yeah. Oh, you are smart. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I love his demeanor.
Mm-hmm.
He's so like calm through the
Yeah.
majority of the film. And I think that's what makes him so formidable and so kind of intimidating is how calm
Yeah.
he is about everything.
Feels like he's in control all the time.
Yeah. And he's got that like dictatorship kind of walk about the camp that he does.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone fears him because he's not afraid to pull the trigger. He is that kind of villain,
Mm-hmm.
which make for the best kinds of villains, the ones that don't hesitate and have to give the big speech detailing their whole plan out.
Right.
Yeah, he's fun to watch. I love him in this movie. And he does have a couple blurps where he like loses his cool a couple times, but it's usually yelling at Caesar about being emotional, which is good irony. You're going to scream at a guy for being emotional. But his whole
he's weirdly like also trying to coach him. He's like, if you are going to be a super successful leader, you can't do that. You need to do this and all that stuff, which is interesting.
But the whole camp is like, it feels gross because he's got the apes like locked up. It's outside. It's cold. They're having to do this like weird labor to build this wall.
Yeah, and they're not feeding them and giving them water.
Very, I think everyone understands what the metaphors or the similarities are there. It's not like they're hiding them.
Yeah, you can see a whole race of people put into camps and you kind of get the gist.
Yep. War has such a cool, like, the tone of the movie from the get-go is so daunting. It's like a 2-hour feeling of when Koba pulled the trigger the first time. Me, like, where it's just the stakes are so high. You're expecting someone, like, you really don't know who is going to make it. And there's so many scenes that you're like, oh God, is this it? Is this really it? I think I fear most for Maurice because I love that character so much.
And he's so pure and innocent and kind. You absolutely do. I think there's the biggest difference I feel from Dawn and War is that the conflict in Dawn is much more a ragtag group of human beings who are just trying to survive, and even if they were trying to go to war against you, it's still, that yes, they have guns and you don't, but you're still relatively equal.
Right.
Like you're both still kind of two tribes who would be going to war. The beginning of War, though, is a very professional army with night vision and lasers and all of this stuff who are able to insert themselves special operations style and assassinate you and then exfiltrate. It feels very different. They definitely feels like the stakes are stacked against the apes, and they are now kind of more of the small ragtag rebellion against the English, American Revolution kind of thing.
It's like the Patriot all over again.
Exactly.
Oh. Actually, it's kind of very similar to the Patriot.
It's a lot like the Patriot.
I never even thought of that until just now. Oh, light bulb.
Yeah, it's the murder in the cave is a lot like when Heath Ledger's burned in the church. Not he's not burned in the church, but his girlfriend's burned in the church, and then Heath Ledger is stabbed later, shot later, both. Anyway, the Patriot's great.
Patriot's amazing.
But yeah, it feels like most of the movie is a prison break movie, though, more than a war movie.
It definitely does go that route. And it's like, I don't want to call it a fun prison break, but Bad Ape makes it fun to watch. The whole like learning how to tunnel under it and get the apes out, and then they're like, well, we're gonna have to free the kids who are being held separately. Like, we're gonna have to free them on the land. We have to do it on the surface. We can't
they can't tunnel to them.
Get to the tunnel. It does like it is interesting that it goes from so daunting and like, I mean, it maintains that tone, but there is the prison break aspect of it, which is intense. But the escalation of the prison and breakout is when the rest of the army show up. And then it's like, well, shit, now we have to survive this war that we're not even actually a part of, but we are potentially about to become victims of or get sucked in.
Right. They need to just avoid getting squished by it. Yeah, you worry so much that they'll be discovered as they're trying to escape, and that doesn't happen for almost the entire time. And then they end up pretty much escaping. But there is the added threat of the actual battle that they're stuck in the middle of and trying to get out of.
Yeah. And you know, the prison break, it does get very daunting because Caesar still reverts back to, I have to kill the colonel. He killed my wife. He killed my son. I still have to complete my vendetta.
Yeah.
And there's so many moments where you're like, just, you have to let him die this other way. Like, I understand not being able to let him die at someone else's hands, but like every time you turn back towards the camp, something bad has happened. Like, every time you gotta stop doing it, Caesar. Stop it. God damn it.
You do want him to turn away from that path earlier than he does. But it also, that I do love that moment when he does get into the room and discover why the colonel hasn't been seen for like a day or so, and discover that he's fallen to that side effect of the drug, that he has now lost his speech and really can't lead his men anymore and is no longer a threat. And then Caesar's thought process that you see on his face, that he's trying to decide, do I go through with it and kill him, or do I kill him out of mercy, or do I just leave and let him be? And then kind of trying to interpret it, what he wants, what this adversary wants, would rather that you did, and kind of leaves him the gun to take care of it himself.
I was really thankful because Caesar doesn't use guns. There's that one scene in Dawn where he aims the shotgun at the humans, but he throws it into the lake. Caesar never actually pulls a trigger. And I was thankful that they maintained that for him right up to that moment. I think he understands the colonel's defeat is there just because the colonel has now become what he has hated. I mean, he let his own son perish because he stopped being able to speak like a human. And I think Caesar just sees him as like, yep, you can succumb to your own shit. I have to let that go. Of course, then Caesar has to get out of the camp, which is being bombed.
And I guess the other main conflict of the movie is the monkeys that are helping the humans, and their occasional interaction with Caesar and the actual free apes. They try to explain to them that you're not on the right side. You're putting up with this abuse of being called a donkey just to survive, but it's not going to work out the way you think it is. And so for that one who is commanded to give him a rocket launcher and blow him up to actually save Caesar, it's a great, just like, huzzah!
Because he finally kind of like sees the damage, and he sees like the carelessness that the humans actually have. And I think it's I think that one ape does finally understand, like, oh, they are gonna kill me at the end of this, like, because I am, end of the day, I'm still the ape. They will always see me as a threat, so they have to neutralize me. I like his heroic move at the end, and I mean, it's sad, it's very effective, because he understands that's the last thing he's ever going to do. And I love the shot where you see the soldier like freak out over realizing that he just blew up a soldier, and then turning the gun on the ape. And I just like how Reeves has that scene, that the way it plays out from the distance, and he's in the background. I think
still
very effective. Yeah, man, Caesar. There's always, what is with, not all, but there's a few war films where an act of mercy really backfires on your hero. And Caesar's act of mercy for, I think his name's the Reverend. That sounds right. For that soldier. Really backfires on Caesar right there.
Yeah.
It's real. It's a shame.
Yeah, it really is. It's I mean, you kind of feel like it's coming in a weird way. Like, you feel like Caesar's accomplished pretty much everything that he needs to. And he survived so much that it's not terribly surprising, but it is still very sad.
It's not surprising, and you definitely see it coming. It's just, it's one of those things where you're like, you don't want to actually see it happen. Yeah. And so him getting shot, you're just like, instantly you just know, like, oh, that's it. That's the one. Like, yeah, Caesar's still up and fighting, but you just, you know, to your core, that's the one that's gonna do it.
Yeah.
And then, like, the giant explosion happens and Caesar manages to, like, get out, but then Caesar's watching the fucking, like, the Army B, I guess we'll call them, like, have taken over, and they've realized they've won this battle against the rogue colonel and his men. And you see Caesar kind of realizing, like, it's a whole horde of armed humans.
Yeah. And it's not like this other group of humans are that put down the bad guys are really going to be the saviors, or the ones that will actually work with you. You see them turn and see Caesar, and you're like, it's just immediately apparent that no, the same war is going to continue. Like, you're at war. Everything Caesar said at the end of Dawn is still true.
Yeah.
That there's no going back from this.
But thank God for avalanches.
Yeah, that avalanche was a major lifesaver.
Major lifesaver.
Yeah, like, if there's a more efficient way to take out an entire army, I don't know what it would be.
It was pretty... I've always taken that as, like, because the explosions that happen at the bunker, the main, like, house of the base, that seems to trigger that avalanche. And I always feel like the colonel purposely had that area kind of backed up like that as the last ditch. I could be just...
No, I think it's a clever, that's certainly a way to do it. Like, that could be his Alamo, that he would just say,
yeah,
we'll fight them as long as we can, and we'll just hunker down and survive the avalanche if we can.
It feels like that would be something the colonel would have triggered, like the dead man trigger.
Why he would choose to have the battle there. Yeah.
And
I think you're right.
I love that when the avalanche is all done, you know, Caesar's frantically looking around. I love that you can hear all the other apes kind of hooting and hollering around the trees, and you just have that, like, sigh of relief. You're like, oh, thank God. These guys survived. They did it. They got to get the hell out of here, though. Like, Go.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah. Stop taking your time about it.
I love the journey at the end, the final, like, cross the desert, find this new home, this beautiful landscape.
It feels very much like Caesar's their Moses. Like he's leading them to the promised land where they can live and survive without any threat for generations to come.
And I remember that first time I watched it, because their journey through the desert, I mean, it goes for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all shots of Caesar, like he's interacting, he's riding the horse, and you're like, oh, cool.
It's gonna be okay.
We're good. Him and Maurice talking, though, dude, the scene gets me. Like, I come close almost every time I watch the movie
to crying.
Like, not full on like cry, but you can feel like the goosebumps,
emotion.
You can feel the well. Yeah, you're just like, oh, just because their conversation, you know, Caesar just being like, we made it. Like, I can't believe we get to actually experience some real peace.
Right. And they've been through so much since being in the cages at the sanctuary.
Right. Together. I mean, it's been a lot. It's been a heavy journey, not just for the apes, but, you know, just everything all the loss that Caesar had to endure, all the loss that Maurice, that we never see, endured probably before the cage, and then just friendships and stuff in the war.
Yeah.
But when Maurice sees the blood, when he slips, you're just like, God damn it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sons of bitches.
Yeah, it's exactly what you don't want to have happen, but it's obviously it has to happen also at the same time.
Yeah. I love I love Maurice actually talks, and they share the, you know, apes strong together kind of stuff, and saying farewell to his friend. Man, you feel so bad for Maurice. You really do.
Oh yeah.
And because I think the way that I've always taken his character is he's been Caesar's mentor from the cages. He's been his friend, and I think Maurice has always actually kind of expected to be the one to die and not Caesar.
Yeah.
You know, and
yeah, I think he's always been kind of his voice of reason, or his mentor's a good way to put it, or confidant, just somebody that Caesar can go to and talk about things, and they get each other, and he'll give him advice and not bullshit him and all that stuff. But yeah, it does feel like he's kind of the older ape. He's been through more. He's not as like strong in the like violent sense, like in the he's not going to go to war. Right? He's a lovable little orangutan. Like he has such a good heart, and so that certainly felt like would just lead him to a place where he would be in a situation where he would choose something that would cause him to die earlier.
Right.
And yeah, I thought that too, for sure.
I do respect the decision to not give Caesar a very drawn out death, because he goes pretty fast. His body falls slow, but he goes pretty quick. And watching him slump and just kind of like stop, and then Maurice like helps lay him down. I love how they conclude it though, with like there's all that peace and happiness, and then you hear Maurice kind of give that call of like he's gone, and that's your end credits. It might bother some people, but I think it's such a powerful ending.
Yeah, I think it's much better than, I think it would be cliche to do the like, oh, now we have to have like a funeral procession for this leader and remember him and build some statue or do something to like show the legacy of Caesar. Like everybody knows that Caesar is the entire reason that they're there, and nobody's going to forget him, and he's established that already. So you don't need any of that stuff.
Yeah. And I like that the fade out, you do see apes down the line. Everyone just kind of turns their heads, and you have that quick, like, on their faces of, oh, crap.
Yeah.
I
What
think
do we
that
do now?
I think that speaks volumes. What a fantastic trilogy. You know, for someone who was never a fan of the originals or the Tim Burton one, this trilogy always takes me off guard because I'm like, it's such a powerful trilogy. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so well written. It's so well executed. And it's just, I love it. I really do.
Yeah. And for me, I love the original. I like the sequels mostly because it all feeds into it. But I think that this trilogy is much better, and I think is what I would hope you would get whenever someone wants to reboot some classic thing, that you do it in a way that isn't doing the same thing over again or trying to trick people that knew the twist of the original or something like that, that you do it in a way that just takes the heart of the characters and the story and the humanity, because the entire ape story is just a human story
Right.
and how we relate to them, like you said, and and creates something new within the same vein.
Yeah.
Like, it all feels, you can watch these first three movies and the original movie and it all connects, even though the apes don't look as good in the original one. But it's still all there. All the pieces are there, even if they do enough movies to get back to the original. I'm still curious where that would go or how that could go.
But I've always thought that was like what sets this trilogy apart is, yeah, it connects to the originals. It can, but it doesn't rely on that. It's its own thing. It just happens to, like, you can connect it there. You don't have to.
Yeah.
This can be your apes. Like, we can just do this. Yeah, there's little fun nods. Like, I think it's in Rise. There's like a headline that says an astronaut has lost its space or something like that. It's just, it's fun to know, and it's good to know how they approached this trilogy, because it doesn't have to rely on the originals. And I think this is a great example of, if you're going to reboot a classic franchise or a classic film, maybe take some notes from these guys, right? Because even the people, even like our dad's generation who love that, can watch these and be like, no, these are really good movies. It doesn't.
Yeah, these movies are really for everybody.
Yeah,
like they don't try to cater to the original fans. They don't try to make it fresh for new fans. They just make a great story.
It's just a great story. It's such a cool story. So what are because Kingdom takes place like hundreds of years, if I remember reading right. Like, it's way in the future from war. So obviously we're not going to see the same apes that we've been watching.
Yeah, should be a whole fresh batch of characters, seems like. I don't have a lot of expectations or thoughts about the story. I think it seems possible, that maybe even likely, that they'll do a lot of the original movie things with the humans being the animals and the apes kind of subjugating them in the same sort of way, and that being the norm, and being accepted, and then the cycle reverting, and some human talking or something like that. It's been 7 years in real life since the last movie came out, and a lot has changed since then. Particularly, Disney bought 20th Century Fox and in 2019, and so it's the first time that they own the property and are making a movie. Matt Reeves not doing it. Wes Ball is directing it, who the only thing he's done so far is the Maze Runner trilogy, which I like.
I really like that trilogy. Yeah,
I like it. It's not great, but I think it's good. although I would have said, if you had told me Matt Reeves was taking over, I would have said Cloverfield is good. I don't know that it's great. And so I think that it certainly could be his chance to break out and put his stamp on this. As long as it's still, there's so much that's so great and done so well that he certainly still needs to stay in the same lane that the movies have established and bring all of that. He can do a lot of new things, but he still needs to keep the heart. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I agree. I find myself not having that many reservations. Like I'm also not having too many expectations. I'm gonna try and go into this one. Just oddly looking forward to see where the story is gonna go. If they continue their own kind of way, like if he takes a note from Matt Reeves and decides like, well, we redirected the story from the original script, but it's going to maintain this whole heart and the, like you said. I am very curious, and I hope they show or talk a little bit about the gap in time, kind of fill in some of the gap, because I think it's very interesting that there is a king in this. I think that's interesting.
How you establish a government like that, basically. The choices to do that.
And obviously he's got to be kind of a corrupted king, but I'm looking for it. There's a shot in the trailer when he's talking about Apes learning, and he's saying like, you'll learn, I will learn. There's something about that shot and the way he says that I'm like, ooh, you might be you could either be the best character in the film just from your demeanor, all of your little things. Or you're going to be like the worst character in this movie. And I'm going to I'm going to be really bummed out by it.
Worst isn't done badly, or worst
done badly. Evil? Like
okay.
I think the king is going to be a character that's either going to be just super formidable and like potentially, I think it'd be kind of interesting if potentially he went kind of the direction like Joaquin Phoenix in Gladiator is, where he ends up just being such a puke, where you're like, but he's so good. He's such a puke. Or the movie's just going to be a real trash and he's going to be like the main reason it's trash.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge for sure, not having Caesar as the focal point of the story. Who else is going to be that new focal point, and do you care about them as much as you did Caesar?
I think there's a lot of challenge to this one. I hope it's awesome, and I'm going to go into it expecting some cool stuff.
The trailer looks very cool, visually similar style as War and Rise. I think
which I'm happy about. It needs to follow that vein. So, very excited for it. I think it's funny that I am at a place in life where I look forward to a Planet of the Apes movie.
It's I had also kind of skipped, not intentionally, but had just kind of been late to watching all of them, and liked the first one, and then saw the second one, and then didn't see the third one for a really long time just because I had missed it. But yeah, I'm rewatching them all. I was like, God, this series is so good. And I am now really hyped for Kingdom.
It's so well done, and I'm so happy they made it. And also Matt Reeves has proven like he's pretty good. He's pretty good at what he does.
I'm glad he's gotten to where he's at and is giving us what he's giving us, because I wish that Batman 2 was this year, but that's fine.
I know.
It can be whenever it needs to be.
Like
take your time, Matt Reeves. It'll be fine.
Come on, Matt. we need this movie. But
so yeah, there you go.
There you go. You're caught up. You're all set for Kingdom. Hopefully, granted, we cliff noted the hell out of those 3 movies.
Certainly, if you want the full experience, you need to watch it and just get all the emotional weight of every single scene, because they are phenomenal. But if you just need it, if you loved it and you've seen it and you just didn't have the time, you wanted to catch it up in a couple of hours, there you go.
Yeah. Thank you. Let us know what you think of the most recent trilogy. We've always called it the Reeves, Matt Reeves trilogy, but he didn't do the first one. He had like nothing to do with the first one.
Yeah, came in late.
So I don't know what the official title for this trilogy is, but
I guess successful reboot and not the
there you go.
Tim Burton reboot. The current not even a trilogy anymore.
Yeah.
The current Apes series.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think about those, what your favorites are, or any major moments.
Characters or So look forward to it.
Yeah. And what you think of the new one when it comes out, because it should be out when this episode is still pretty new.
Sweet. Yeah, so go watch Kingdom. Let us know what you thought of it. We'll be letting you think or know what we thought of it or think of it.
Yeah. Probably next time.
Yeah. Should be a good time. Thank you, everyone. Make sure you subscribe, follow, do all that stuff. So bad.
Yeah, it helps us out a lot. We appreciate it. See you later.
Bye.